All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 4 recap. Another great week in the books. Couple close matchups. We only really had one matchup that wasn't decided before Monday night. Disco was down a little bit. Ended up coming back with Kyle Rudolph. Lots of things happened this week. A couple trades went down. I'll let the podcasters maybe get into it in their segment a little bit more. But I think a lot of it has already been said, and quite a few opinions about some of the things that have gone down. We even had a trade here just a little early this morning involving Gags once again, moving, let's see, a quarterback, a running back, and a receiver for a quarterback, a running back, and a receiver. Pretty good trade. I think Gags needed somebody a little bit more reliable behind Cam Newton and Russell Wilson. I don't know if I think they're on a bye this week, so he needed somebody to get through this week. So that trade, it's pretty even. It is what it is. Pretty fair for both teams, so no problems with that. So let's just get right into it. First matchup was, of course, the defending champions, Springfield Isotopes, going up against Everybody Ertz. The Isotopes were temporarily renamed Ertz Ertz So Good, with the John Cougar Mellencamp reference. I don't know if anybody really was interested in that or not, but I found it entertaining. But anyway, Everybody Ertz ends up taking this one down. The final score here was 177.75 to 171.55. So just about a 6-point difference there. This one was interesting and frustrating to watch because, all sorts of things. I knew I only needed a handful of points going into the Sunday night game. Detling and I were at the game there in Pittsburgh, and I know I just had Boswell, the kicker for the Steelers, and the Chiefs defense, and I think I only needed about 12 points or so from between the two of them, just Boswell maybe kick a field goal or two, and Chiefs D at least get me something, a couple points would be enough to get me by for this week. But as it quickly turned out, the Kansas City Chiefs D was not prepared for the Steelers to come out and basically take out their frustrations from the Eagles game on them, and they ended up getting me 2 points only because they held the Steelers to just under the rushing yard limit, so which negated the -3 for losing. And all right, well, enough of my rambling about it. Let's get into the actual matchup here. Quarterbacks, we had Phillip Rivers going up against Carson Palmer. Rivers got 52 points. Palmer, he actually only had 36.4. He got injured with a concussion near the end of the game. He had, I think Drew Stanton come in, who ended up throwing 2 interceptions, only scoring you, I think Drew Stanton actually scored you negative points total, but having to combine, because of the 1-game quarterback injury rule that we have, you got Palmer stats and you got Stanton stats combined, which meant that Carson Palmer, you put them together, Palmer had 288 passing yards and Stanton had 34 or 36, 37, no, I think 37, something like that, which bumped you up over 300 total passing yards and got you the 3-point bonus there. So Stanton actually got you an extra 3 points for that, which you wouldn't have gotten that bonus if it had just been Carson Palmer. Although, I guess Carson Palmer probably would have gotten those points for you anyway if he had stayed in the game. Receivers, everybody Ertz had Crabtree, Devontae Parker, and Brandon Marshall, while Isotopes had Cooks, Landry, and Dorsett. Let's see. Difference here was obviously Michael Crabtree. He had 7 for 88, but he had 3 touchdowns, including one near the end of the game there. So those 3 touchdowns in a 6-point margin of victory, the catch and the touchdown. I think it was a short touchdown. It wasn't too many yards, but that's the deciding factor in the matchup. Well, it could also be the Houston. They had a punt return touchdown. That was a deciding factor in this matchup. I mean, when it comes down to a 1 touchdown difference here, that's pretty much what it came down to. Because I said Crabtree, Parker, and Marshall. Let's see. Crabtree, 33.8. Parker, only 4. And Marshall, 18.9. Pretty good there. So you got about 55, 56 points from your receivers. Isotopes, Cooks, Landry, Dorsett. Cooks, only 6. Landry, 13. And Dorsett, 13.5. So only about 32, 33 points from the Isotopes wide receivers. Running backs, Ertz had Ingram and Coleman. Ingram, most of his stats came from receiving. He had 55 yards and a touchdown, while Coleman only had 14 yards, so not much from him at all after his 3-touchdown outburst last week. So you actually only got about 12 or 13 points from your running backs. Isotopes, Blunt and West. Blunt had 54 yards. West had 113 and a touchdown. So, let's see, just about 25 points from the running backs. Tight ends, we had a pretty good matchup. Jordan Reed versus the reserve. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Rejuvenated. I think that's the word I'm looking for. The rejuvenated Jimmy Graham. Jordan Reed had his best game of the year at 28.3 points with 2 touchdowns. And Jimmy Graham, he had 6 for 113, so 17 points there. Flex players, we had DeMarco Murray versus Devontae Freeman. Murray, 26 points, and Freeman, 14.5. Kickers, had Hauschka going against Boswell from the Steelers. Hauschka actually kicked a couple field goals and made a couple PATs, while Boswell only had 5 PATs, no field goal attempts in that game. Perhaps another deciding factor there. Boswell just not kicking any field goals, scoring, the team scoring touchdowns. Those couple field goals make a difference when you're only losing by, a handful of points, 5, 6, 7 points. Those field goals come in pretty big and make a difference there. But let's see. Finally, defenses. We had Houston versus Kansas City. And Houston, like I said, they had a punt return touchdown, which was I think it was also a long touchdown, so you got 9 points for that. They had a turnover. They did pretty well. They gave up a lot of yards, though. I think you ended up getting about 25 points from them, while, as I mentioned, Kansas City's defense pretty much just got destroyed by the Steelers in every possible category that I could have gotten any points for, and I ended up only getting 2 from them. So that was a big difference maker there. When you have these close matchups, one little thing here or there makes a big difference that really nothing you can do too much about. Good scores for both teams, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. The matchup doesn't go in your favor. So, with that being said, we had everybody Ertz with the win. He moves to 3-1. He's now in 3rd place, while the Isotopes drop to 1-3, and they are all the way down in 9th place. Next up, we had the Commish, New Gods, Mad Titans. going up against From Gags to Riches. And Gags took this one down, coming back from his 0-2. He's now 2-2, taking down the previously undefeated New Gods Mad Titans. Final score here, 189.05 to 144.45. So we had about a 45 point difference here. The biggest factors had to have been quarterback and I think defense. We'll get into it. New Gods had Derek Carr versus Cam Newton for Gags. Cam Newton got hurt. Once again, a matchup where the quarterback had a concussion. And you got all the points for Derek Anderson coming in. He got you up over the 300-point barrier, 300-yard barrier, getting you bonus points there. And he had a ton of completions, I think he had about 170 yards. Stat-wise, I think he actually did better than Cam Newton. He had 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions. And I think Derek Anderson actually ended up getting you almost an extra, like 28 points or something like that. So, really beneficial for you having that rule in place for this week, or else you would have only gotten 31.5 points from Cam Newton. Carr had 50.75, pretty good performance from him, even though he had 25 completions and 4 touchdowns, but he was actually under 200 yards passing. Let's see. Receivers, Gags had Hopkins, Beckham, and Rashard Matthews. Hopkins only 1.4, Beckham only 5.3, and Matthews 10.2. So you got about 17 points from your receivers. New Gods, Marvin Jones, Doug Baldwin, Alshon Jeffrey, 12.4, 9.4, and 7.6 respectively. So that's about, 21, 28, about 29, 30 points from your receivers. Great matchup of the running backs here. We had Elliott and Hyde versus Gordon and Le'Veon. Elliott had 140 yards and a touchdown. Hyde had 75 yards and a touchdown. So you got about, 16 and 6 is 22 and 13, so about 35 points from them. Pretty good. Gordon and Bell. Gordon had he didn't have too much rushing, but he had 2 touchdowns. Le'Veon Bell, no touchdowns, but 144 yards. So you got 17.5 points there. Tight ends, we had Fleener versus Kelsey. Kelsey 13.3, Fleener 5. Kelsey caught a touchdown on the last play of the Steelers game in garbage time, when I don't even know why Kansas City was still even trying. Just kneel the ball and get that game over with. Anyway, flex players, we had Terrell Pryor versus LaShawn McCoy. McCoy had 22.8. He had 6 catches, pretty good. He scored a receiving touchdown, pretty good game from him, while Pryor had 5 for 46 and a touchdown. I think he must have had a little bit of rushing yards or something, because he had exactly 15 points there. Kicker, Gostowski. Patriots got shut out. He actually got you -1 because he missed a field goal, while Gano had, looks like, one 50-yard field goal and a couple PATs. And your defenses, Denver Broncos whipped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yahoo says 20. I think it was closer to 25 or 30, somewhere in that ballpark. While New Gods Mad Titans didn't have the Eagles this week, so he started the Indianapolis Colts, and they only had 3 sacks. They lost. They gave up a lot of yards. I think the total might have been 6 or something like that. So those are the big difference makers there. And Gags, he moves up to 5th place, while New Gods Mad Titans, he is in 2nd place. All right, the next matchup was the Dub C Hooligans versus the Detonators. Not a very good matchup here in terms of points, but it was definitely good enough for the Dub C Hooligans, as he wins this one. Final score ended up being 148.55 to 134.35. So about a 14-point difference here. Said 140 to 130, kind of low scores for teams this week. But a win is a win, no matter how many points you score. Let's see. Quarterbacks, we had Dub C with Drew Brees and Detonators Stafford. Each one scored about 33 points. Looks like Brees had just under 35, while Stafford had 31.5, which kind of disappointing. Only 34 points from Drew Brees and Stafford, who both teams looked like they were going to have, both quarterbacks, I should say, looked like they had great matchups for a lot of scoring there, but just didn't pan out that way, surprisingly, for either one, Brees or Stafford. Wide receivers, we had Steve Smith, Golden Tate, and Sanders for Dub C. Smith 25, Golden Tate 3, and Sanders 22.8. So you got about 50 points from your three receivers. Steve Smith finally deciding to show up at some point this year. While for the Detonators, his pretty solid trio here of Mike Evans, Larry Fitzgerald, and T.Y. Hilton. Evans only 11, Fitzgerald same thing, 11, and Hilton 17.2. He had seven catches and a touchdown. Unfortunately, he only turned those 7 catches into 42 yards. You'd like to see a little bit more from somebody like T.Y. Hilton, who is really more of a boomer bust type receiver. You'd like to see a bigger yardage total from him. But you got about 38, 39, maybe 40 points there from your three receivers, so pretty good, pretty close matchup so far. Running backs, we had Dub C with Derrick Henry and Lamar Miller. Henry only 9 rushing yards. Miller only, not only, but 82 rushing yards. So you got about 9 points from your running backs. Detonators, you had Dwayne Washington from Detroit, and is it Justin Howard from the Bears, replacing Jordan Howard, I'm sorry. Washington, he only had 6 rushing yards. Looks like he got hurt as well, so I don't know what's going to happen with him. While Howard actually had a pretty good game. He went over 100 yards, but no touchdowns or anything. So he got you about 14. So you got about 15 points from your running backs. Tight ends, Barnidge versus Gronk. Gronk, don't know where he's been or if he's still not fully healthy or what exactly is going on with him. Because another really letdown performance. He only had 1 catch for 11 yards, while Barnidge, decent game from him, 7 catches, 57 yards, 12.7. Flex players, both guys had wide receivers here. Dub C had Terrence Williams from Dallas, while Detonators had Kelvin Benjamin. And actually, Williams ended up just barely winning this matchup here with 14.4 to Benjamin's 12.9. Both guys caught a touchdown, but they were fairly equal in receiving yards, but let's see, Williams had 1 more catch than Benjamin. Kickers, we had Walsh versus Janikowski. Janikowski, no field goals, just PATs again for the kicker here. While Blair Walsh, he had a 45-yard field goal. He did miss one too, and a couple PATs. So it ended up being about 7-4 kicker-wise. And finally, defenses. Detonators had a good matchup here. Actually, you guys played each other, it looks like. So your defense is Arizona versus the Rams. And the Rams actually got the best of this one with a couple turnovers. Looks like 5 turnovers. And won the game, did pretty well. Yahoo says 24. I think it was, I want to say it was probably closer to 30, maybe a little bit more than that. While Arizona, they actually did okay, even though they lost the game. Looks like they had 2 sacks and a turnover, but they lost. I think Yahoo says 11. I think it was right around there. Maybe it was 14 or 18, somewhere in that range. Can't remember for sure. It usually goes up a little bit from whatever Yahoo says. But so another close matchup. Looks like it was determined by, so the difference between tight ends would probably be the biggest difference here. So Dub C got a little bit more production from their, so just a little bit better quarterback score and a little bit better wide receiver score, and the 10-point difference there between tight ends was the difference, pushing this one in favor of the Dub C Hooligans. And as we know, the Dub C Hooligans, who traded away Julio Jones, who I don't want to get started on this, talking about this, because it frustrates me to no end. I know that it's just my personal opinion. I know that Kevin will argue his opinion on the trade till he'll defend himself to the end, and I understand that. But just I'm done. I'm not talking about it anymore, because if I get started on it, I will talk about it for probably 10 minutes. I don't think anybody cares to hear any more about that, from me at least. So, the matchup, Dub C, I think he gets his third straight win, if I remember correctly. He is now 3-1. He's in fourth place, while the Detonators, who, as we know, started off 1-0 and in first place with the highest score, he's now dropped 3 games in a row, and he is all the way down from first to 10th place. But, of course, it's only week 4, so don't get too upset. Next up, who did we have? Oh, let's see. We had FC Bahorek going up against Possum Magic. Possum took this one down pretty easily, even though FC Bahorek had Matt Ryan play the game of his life. Final score here is 208.2 for Possum versus FC Bahorek's only 138.65. So a 70-point difference. And so the FC 138.65, but he got 75 points from Matt Ryan. So you only got 60 points from the rest of your team? 63 points from the other 9 players on your team? I'm sorry. All right, Possum Magic. Let's see, quarterbacks. As I said, we had Roethlisberger versus Ryan. Ryan got 75 points. Roethlisberger, pretty good game from him, matching up, keeping pace at least with Matt Ryan there. He had 62 points thanks to 300 yards, 5 touchdowns. Receivers, Possum had A.J. Green, Cole Beasley, and Tajon Sharp. As we know from the Thursday night game, A.J. Green had a huge game. 10 catches, a touchdown, almost 175 yards receiving, 36.3 points from him. Beasley, 10 points, Sharp, 3.5. So you got a little over 50 points from your wide receivers. Pretty good there. As for FC, Michael Floyd, Deshaun Jackson, Mike Wallace. Floyd did catch a touchdown, but not much else. 12.5 from him. Jackson, only 1 catch for 5 yards. And Wallace, 4 for 44, but he did have a 2-point conversion also. 10.7. So you got about 24 points from your wide receivers. So Possum doubled you up there, just about. Running backs, we had Crowell and Hill, versus C.J. Anderson and Duke Johnson. Crowell over 100 yards, 120 yards and a touchdown. So that's 21 points. Hill, 70 yards. So you got about 28 points from your 2 running backs. While FC, he had Anderson, 50 yards and a touchdown. And Duke Johnson, 45 yards. So you got about 15 points from your running backs. Tight ends, we had Possum with Hunter Henry and FC Dwayne Allen. Let's see. Henry, he had 4 for 60 and a touchdown, while Allen only had 2 for 20. So 16 to 4 there. That big difference in favor of Possum. Flex players, we had Christian Michael for Possum with an even 20 points, while Tyrell Williams had 5 for 40, so exactly 9 points from him. Kickers, fairly even. McManus versus Lambo. Each one kicked a couple field goals and a couple PATs. A little bit in favor of Lambo. While defenses, another matchup against each other. FC had the Giants, while Possum had the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings got about 25 points, maybe 21, 24, something like that. But the Giants, I think they only got you about 6, if I remember correctly. Not too much there. Really, not too much you could do going up against the 208 points from Possum this week. So let's see. So it seems like I don't. I look, you look every week at Possum's lineup, and you're just like, I mean, I'm not knocking you. It's just how, and it's happened. It's been going on for years now, I think. But like, I don't know how it goes on. But he always gets, somehow you always get lucky, so lucky because you get a lot of okay performances from your team up and down your lineup. But it seems like every week there's someone. Every week it's somebody different who just has a huge game and carries you on their backs, to victory here. Obviously, it was AJ Green this week with 36 points, but he had 2 weeks where he was pretty quiet. But it was always somebody else who did really good, like the Vikings defense or Christian Eichel, having a good game, things like that. You can hear Roethlisberger this week, 62 points from him. That was easily his highest total of the season so far. He actually had 2 kind of quiet weeks the last 2 weeks, but so those 2 guys came through and got you the big points there. There's really no superstars on that team. I mean, yeah, AJ Green, he's definitely there, and Roethlisberger can do it every week. Minnesota defense, no question, they're one of the top defenses now. But everybody else, in the lineup they don't really scare you, but somehow they always manage to do good enough for Possum to get victories. So it just, I don't know. It just, is it luck? Is it skill? I don't know. It's a little bit of both, and I'm not, like I said, kudos to you. I'm not knocking your team or your, it's nothing personal or anything. Just note how it seems like every year, said Possum's now in first place at 3-1, highest score, highest team point total so far too. Just manages to always somehow fall that way, at least during the regular season for you. So just interesting. Anyway, with Possum, he's 3-1. Like I said, he's in first place. While FC Bahorik, on the opposite end of the spectrum, he is 1-3, and he is actually all the way now down in 12th place. Alright, the next matchup was the only one that came down to Monday night, as we had the Huber Squashers with about an 8-point lead over Disco. But unfortunately for Huber Squashers, he was finished, while Disco still had Kyle Rudolph left to go. And Rudolph ended up getting twice as many points as he needed to get the win here for Disco. Final score, 161.3 to 152.85. Let's see, quarterbacks. We had Luck versus Cousins. Cousins just under 40 points, while Luck had 46. All right. Wide receivers. The previously mentioned Julio Jones, 12 catches over 100 yards. 12 catches, yes, well over 100 yards. 1 touchdown and exactly 300 receiving yards. So you had a long touchdown in there. You had the 5-point bonus for yards. So 56 56 points just from Julio Jones. So here with Disco, two players were already at, 102 points just from those two players, just from your quarterback and Julio Jones. He also had Benjamin and Kevin White going this week. Looks like Benjamin on, 6.8, and White 11.5. So total of 56 and 17, 73. About 73 points from your wide receivers. As for the Huber Squashers, this is what obviously the biggest difference maker in this matchup was the Julio Jones here, because look at wide receivers. For Huber Squashers, he had Cooper, Snead, and Wheaton. Cooper only 9.8. Snead, he actually had only one catch for 23 yards. And I said, Snead and Cooks looks like a great matchup on paper, but man, I said Cooks only had 3 for 30 and Snead 1 for 23. Everything else, just I don't know what seemed. All the touchdowns went to John Kuhn, I think, is what happened there. And Wheaton for Steelers, he only had one catch, but it was a 30-yard touchdown. He also had a 2-point conversion, got you 12 points. So you ended up getting about 25 points from your wide receivers. Running backs, Disco had Gurley and Yeldon. Gurley only 30 yards and Yeldon 70. So a little over 10 points from your two running backs. While Huber Squashers, he had Marvin Jones and Alfred Morris. One current Redskin versus one former Redskin. Well, not versus, and one former Redskin. Jones had 117 yards and a touchdown, so you got about 20 points from him, while Morris only 3.4. Let's see. Tight ends, Olsen actually did outscore Rudolph 21.6 to 16.5, but it was enough from Rudolph to get that win on Monday night. Flex players, we had some reception-heavy running backs. Gio Bernard versus Charles Sims. Bernard actually won this one with with a whopping score of 7.2, actually doubling up Charles Sims' score. He lost a fumble. He only had 2 catches and, 28 rushing yards, looks like. He only had 3.5 points for you. Kickers, Tucker and Catanzaro. Each one looks like they made a couple field goals and a PAT or two. About, 8-6, I would guess, in favor of Tucker here. Defenses. All right, we had a third matchup here of defenses going up against each other here, as we had Seattle versus the Jets, and Seattle won this one pretty handily. Seattle looks like they had a couple turnovers, 4 sacks. They did pretty good. Yahoo says 19. It was probably closer to 25, 30, somewhere in that range. While I think the 5 that Yahoo says for the Jets was actually correct. They gave up too many points. They lost. They didn't get. They only had 2 sacks, and they gave up a lot of yards too, I think. So I believe 5 was actually correct there. But it was enough, said from Julio Jones, to compensate for all the other places where you didn't get too much, and it was enough to defeat the Huber Squashers this week, said by about a 9-point margin here. Disco, he moves up to 2-2, while Huber Squashers fall to 2-2. Huber Squashers, so they have the same record here, but Huber Squashers are actually in 6th place, while Disco, you are in 8th. And let's see, the final matchup here was the previously winless Twerkin Bullcuts going up against the Mighty Midgets. And Twerkin obviously gets his first victory. Final score 184.95 to 124.5. So a 60-point margin of victory here for Twerkin Bullcuts. Let's see, quarterbacks. We had Bortles versus Dalton, since there was no Aaron Rodgers this week. Dalton just under 40, while Bortles had just under 47. Wide receivers, Twerkin had Maclin, Edelman, and Antonio Brown. Maclin, 12.8. Edelman, 2.6. And Brown, 22.4, thanks to his 2 touchdowns. So you got about 36, 37 points from your 3 receivers. And as for midgets, his 3 receivers, Allen Robinson, Demaryius Thomas, and Jamison Crowder. Robinson, 5 for 55 and a touchdown. Thomas, 6 for 94 and a touchdown. But Crowder, only 2 for 20. So you ended up getting about 40 points, a little over 40, from your 3 receivers. Running backs, we had Frank Gore and McKinnon for Twerkin. Looks like Gore, he scored a touchdown. Gore had 70 yards and a touchdown, while McKinnon had 85 yards and a touchdown. So pretty good performance there. That's about 14 and 13, so about 27 points from your 2 running backs, while midgets had Forte and Artis Payne. Forte, not much here, only 27 yards, while Artis Payne, same thing, only 12 yards. So it looks like you got about 4 points total from your running backs. Not too good there, especially when both of your opponent's running backs score touchdowns here. Tight ends, we had Delaney Walker versus Zach Miller. Pretty much identical receiving stats, each one with about 5 or 6, but Miller scored a touchdown. Flex plays, we had David Johnson versus Stefon Diggs. Actually a pretty quiet game from David Johnson. Only 14.4 points from him. It looks like he must have lost a fumble because he actually did okay. 83 yards and 4 for 41 receiving there. Not too bad. You would have liked to see him maybe score a touchdown, but it's at only 14.4. While Diggs looks like he had only 5 catches for 47 yards. He's been pretty quiet ever since his one huge game a couple weeks ago. He's been, like a 36-point performance back in week 2. And he's been really quiet ever since. So that's hasn't been helping Twerkin, but it was enough from other places to get the win this week. Kickers, we had Vinatieri versus Dan Bailey for the midgets. Vinatieri, couple field goals, couple PATs. His field goals were pretty long. Bailey, looks like he had 1 short field goal and a couple PATs. Looks like it was about a 5 to 13 point margin there. While defenses, we had Cincinnati, who really just ran over the Dolphins there on Thursday night. Yahoo says 17, and I think it was a lot more than that. It was closer to like 30, maybe even a little bit more than 30. As for Carolina, as they got stomped by the Atlanta Falcons, but they did have, I think, a pick 6 and a couple of sacks to get you some points there, even though they gave up obviously a ton of passing yards. I think they did okay in terms of rushing allowed, got you a little bit of points. Yahoo says 12. I think that might have been right. Maybe it was 15, I can't remember for sure, but it was right around that area. But said the 40 points from your quarterback is okay. For midgets, your two of your receivers did pretty good, but everybody else, like I said, Crowder 4, Forte 3, Artis Payne 1, Walker 5, Bailey 4, even only 14.4 from David Johnson. Those are a lot. Those are way too many single-digit scores to get you a win most weeks. So I think actually with this, that was the lowest score of the week. So Mighty Midgets would be eliminated from the knockout pool here this week. Twerkin, like I said, he got his first victory of the season. He's now 1-3, and he is all the way up from 12th place to 11th place. While Mighty Midgets, he drops, I think he was 2-0. I think he's now 2-2. And he is still looking good. He is in 7th place. So I think that is it for week 4. Let's see. I mentioned Mighty Midgets now knocked out from the eliminated from the knockout pool. So I think the teams are everybody Ertz, Twerkin, FC Bahorik, and Mighty Midgets are the teams eliminated from the knockout pool so far. Is there really anything else that needs mentioned? I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it. So I will end this one. Looks like here a quick look at week 5 coming up. Bye weeks are getting tough. Trades happening all over the place. Well, maybe not all over the place, but happening with gags, always keeping things interesting. The gunslinger mentality. Always enjoy watching to see what happens here. But we got some good matchups. Said let's see. We got 4 teams at 2-2, 4 teams at 1-3. So a lot of teams looking to avoid going 1-4. Looks like there are no 1-3 teams playing each other this week. So there's no guaranteed 1-4 team to start here. So, but good matchups up and down the schedule here. Just taking a quick look. 3-1 Possum versus 3-1 Dub C. That should be good. Everything else looks like it's either a 2-2 versus a 1-3, or should be interesting. We've got New Gods 3-1 going up against Detonators at 1-3. So that's an interesting matchup. Isotopes versus Huber Squashers. That should be interesting too. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Gag is on a roll right now. Twerkin, he's on a roll too. Did pretty good this week, so we'll see what happens there. Disco on a roll also. He's going up against FC, who's kind of on the ropes right now. Hoping to bounce back. Any other matchups? Ertz versus Midgets should be pretty good. So, close projections. But I think that's pretty much it for the review here. Another great week. And, all right, guys. Let's see, no big injuries to talk about, I don't think so. All right, that's the end of it. Week 4 in the books. Looking forward to week 5. Good luck to everybody, and we'll see you back here again next week. All right, thanks, guys.